Good morning, Facebook. I trust everyone's having a great day so far. There's been a few mixed signals going on. Dan Andrews is apparently turning around saying protesting is unlawful. The chief commissioner is turning around saying that protesting isn't unlawful. It's a human right. So Dan Andrews, this is my message to you, you piece of shit. Stop lying to the people and stop diverting and stop trying to protect your precious little situation here, because your whole situation is crumbling around you. So I've got something to tell everybody about Mr. Dan Andrews, right? I've got some interesting information to tell everybody, and I suggest you all go and have a look at what I'm about to tell you. Dan Andrews is in power at the moment because he was meant to be in power right now in Victoria. And I'll tell you why. He was the guy who single-handedly pushed through and made happen the Public Health and Wellbeing Act of 2008. He was the guy who pushed for that thing to go through. Now, if you go back and read the Hansards from when they were doing the readings of the Public Health and Wellbeing Act, when it comes to any act being enacted, according to the Charter of Human Rights and Responsibilities Act 2006, if anything impedes upon the Charter, there needs to be a compatibility. I've lost my wording. It needs to be a statement of compatibility. It's called, right? And the whoever's presenting the bill needs to get on and explain to people why that charter, why that bill being passed is still in line with the Human Rights Charter. Now, he said that that bill was in line with the Human Rights Charter. He said that, but then there's about 18, 19 pages of every single section of hundreds of different, there's more than 18, 19 pages. There's probably 30 or 40 pages of section after section after section after section that breaches on human rights. So Andrews knew very well back then what he was doing when he was passing the Public Health and Wellbeing Act 2008. And Andrew knows very well what he's doing now as he's working within this time. It's not by accident Dan Andrews is in power right now. Dan Andrews was the guy who was meant to be in power now, as he was the one who sorted all this stuff out back then. Now, if you don't believe me, go and read the Hansards. Go and read the justifications of every single human right that is being engaged as a result of Section 200 and Section 190 of the Public Health and Wellbeing Act. Go and actually read what his arguments were for everything. And it was exactly what he was saying now. In the interest of public safety, we can do this. Well, yes, it is a breach of Section 13. It is a breach of Section 9. It is a breach of Section this, Section that of the Human Rights Charter. But in the interest of public safety, we can engage these sections because of this. So he knew exactly what he's doing. Dan Andrews, you piece of shit, scumbag, dog, rat that you are. You've been planning this for a very fucking long time. You've known what you were doing for a very long time. It even says in the Hansards, just in case of an unmanageable pandemic. That's what it says in the Hansards. Go and read them. Go and have a look at the first reading, the second reading, and the third reading. And go and have a look just how much this guy knew back then, and then see if it's a coincidence right now who the very guy who was in power, who was doing the readings back then for the very said bill that is making our life hell on earth at the moment in this state, because the Public Health and Wellbeing Act is Victorian legislation. Go and have a look what he was saying back then. Go and have a look how many human rights he knew he was breaching upon, and then go and see that he knew what he was doing, and go and have a look of what his explanation was for every single one of them. And it was always the same thing. In the human life is more important. Yes, it breaches against this, but in the interest of public safety, we need to do this. But the interesting thing was that Dan Andrews and all the people back then who were listening, they all agreed that they didn't need to do a declaration override, considering that if you go and have a look at the read of the Hansards, there was section after section after section that was breaching on human rights. So if there was all these sections breaching on human rights, my question is back then, why wasn't there requested a declaration override because this bill was so egregious in the first place? And it's a good question to ask, right? So what you do is go and have a look, type in Public Health and Wellbeing Act 2008 bill reading. Go and have a look at the Hansards that this guy was reading from back then, and go and have a look at everything he's saying now over the media to people is exactly the same narrow-minded comments he was making back then as to why you can pass a bill that's so egregious in the interests of human rights. And he talks about freedom of movement, he talks about freedom of assembly, and he talks about all these things, and he just says, in the interest of public safety, we can do this, in the interest of public safety, we can do this, in the interest of public safety, we can do this. So it's not by accident. This guy isn't in power right now because of dumb luck, and he got elected. This guy is in there because he was the one who was selected a very long time ago to implement this plan. And if you don't believe me, go and read what the fucking guy was saying back then when he was doing the readings. Go and read how egregious this bill was. Go and read how many human rights he said it was engaging. The whole Hansard's talking about this human right's broken, this human right's broken, this human right's broken, this human right's broken. And it's just excuse after excuse after excuse after excuse. So my question is, back then, why wasn't there more of a push from the crossbenchers? Why wasn't there more of a push from the opposition to say, well, hang on a second, why is there so many things being breached now, and why is this thing so fucking vague? Why is it so vague in the way it's written? Because all they did was set up section 203 subsection 1, and then they created a blanket rule that any directive the chief health officer says we need to comply with, no matter how ridiculous it is. But there was no actual annotation of what the directives would be whatsoever. So I'm telling you, don't think that everything that's happening now is by accident. Don't think that the guy that's in power right now in this state, right? Do not think that this guy is there by accident. They have been planning this since 2008, right? Please don't believe me. And this isn't about the realm of conspiracy. This is about putting 1 and 2 together, seeing the plan, seeing just who was the one who was pushing it through back then, seeing what the guy was saying and reading back then, and then seeing that it all lines up with what was happening now. And seeing he's saying the exact same things now as he was saying back then about the bill. And he says specifically, in case there is an uncontrollable, he says this, uncontrollable, highly infectious pandemic. That's what he says in the readings of the Hansard. So please Australia, go and read. Get the hell away from that fucking TV. Go and read and go and see that everything that's happening, all these businesses getting destroyed, your life's being destroyed, you being locked up in your homes. It was all spoken about back then, and it was agreed in the interest of public safety that it should all happen. All right? And all Dan Andrews talking about that, these are unprecedented times and we've never had this happen before. Funny, mate, how when you're talking about this in your Hansards, it sounds very, very much like you've already knew exactly what you were going to do fucking 12 years later, you piece of shit. Thank you very much. Have a good read. And I plan to read a shitload more of it today. I spent about 4 hours yesterday just going through the Hansards. All right. So put that in your pipe and smoke it, people. See you later.